You know, I got a pretty spicy take for you guys. This is a very spicy one, so listen up to this. Kent State will win a game in 2025 or afterwards. So, Kent State will win a football game at least from now until eternity. They will win, perhaps, maybe a single game. Had to give you guys a minute to stew on that before I continued. Good to see everybody. I know it's been a little bit since I've been back on here. I've got some great projects in the making, though. People have been talking about the SEC video. I've been working on that. I've got some future stuff in the making as well, including another coaching experience video on the way this upcoming week. Now, I do have some other projects I'm going to tell you guys about once we get started today. We're going to start at our usual time as always, and I'll tell you guys pretty much everything that I've planned from this point on, where we're reaching the end point of the college football offseason. We've got less than 2 months until the college football season officially kicks off. So I'm going to tell you guys all about what I've got planned for the rest of the offseason. So stick around, and I'll see you guys shortly. All right, well, I believe that's enough of that. I don't know what you guys think, but I think we're about ready to go ahead and get started because that's exactly what we're going to go ahead and do. Precious ceiling fan up there. Great ceiling fan. Very, very great ceiling fan, in fact. But enough of that. Let's get back to the topic at hand, everybody. We got some college football takes to discuss today because the offseason is coming to a close. And if you guys know anything about the offseason, everybody's undefeated. Every single college football team is undefeated. They're all going 17-0. They're all beating everybody in the playoffs. They're going to dominate their schedule. Their quarterback's going to win the Heisman. Their running back is going to win an award. Their long snapper is going to win the best long snapper in the universe award. Like, you get the idea. It's the offseason where everybody gives their takes on their team. A lot of them are stupid. Some of them aren't, but more than often than not, all of them, or at least a whopping majority of them, don't come to fruition. But that's the great thing about the offseason is that, you know, we're able to live in this land of delusion before coming back down to reality. And a lot of us are unfortunately going to be doing that, and that's just the way it goes. That's the way it goes. Look at Florida State. They certainly came down to reality, didn't they? Remember last offseason when they were still talking about how they get started and they got snuffed from the playoffs and Kirk Herbstreit's a big fat meanie and all that. Well, you saw what happened. We all saw what happened. So plenty of time until the season begins, but it's going to be here before you know it. We're already most of the way through the summer. Today is July 12th. So, yeah. Maybe, I think 6 weeks. We got 6 weeks until kickoff in, I think, no. Because I'm thinking North Carolina kicks off week 0, but they don't. And if I'm right, the teams that play in Dublin, Ireland in week 0 are Iowa State and Kansas State. A Big 12 game. So, yeah, we'll be excited about that. And I'm sure, as you guys know, I'll be live for that. I'll do College Football Chaos for week 0. You get the idea. Got a lot of project updates to let you guys know about. But before anything else, just want to let you guys know, the promo code is still open for the Squidtard store. We've got 25% off on your purchase if you put the promo code in called Tardaria. All the information you need to know about that is in the description of this live stream. You can check out the Squidtard store. All the stuff should be there. You can buy whatever you want. And then just put the promo code in and it'll be 25% off of your purchase. Great idea. Very, very great idea. But nonetheless, I appreciate everybody for being on here. We are almost, and this is something absolutely crazy to me. I never thought we'd be here. We're almost to 15,000 subscribers. Yes, 15,000. I mean, that's absolutely crazy to think about how far we've come. You know, I have a goal to reach 25,000 before the start of the college football season. But even if we make it to 20,000, I mean, that would be absolutely amazing. And because every single subscriber counts, every new viewer counts, and it goes such a long way. So I appreciate you guys for spreading this out. I appreciate you for watching because that does go a long way in the algorithm. The Big Ten video can prove that to you. Look at how well that's performing. And for most cases, especially with college football takes, any attention is good attention because even if you have a bad take, you're going to get a lot of viewers telling you about how stupid you are. Your video's stupid. It's dumb. It's stupid. Penn State's not a real king of the conference. And Oregon won the Big Ten last year, Squidtard. You're going to get a whole lot of that. So, I mean, that's all there is to it at the end of the day. I appreciate all of you guys for all the support that you've given to this channel. And I appreciate especially my channel members, Tyler Heller, Jolena, Renji, Rainman, 998899, EVX, Young Man Connor, SEC Football Tube, Mantis Toboggan, Daizo, Not JFKH, Ashton Wilcox, Milton Butler, That Guy, Molnar, Sifs, Armchair Sports Rants, and Andrew Barber. If you guys have not become an official member of the Squidtard Sports YouTube channel, highly recommend doing that. You get to view the videos much quicker than everybody else. And as an added bonus, you get a nice little Squidtard orange next to your username. It's pretty cool. Well, we got a lot to go over today. I'm going to go over all of your guys' college football takes, see what we can find, see what interesting stuff we can find. First, let's do roll call. And if I don't call your name here, I apologize. I'm going to try and get seat everyone, though. T. Paulus, Benjamin Guzman, Luke Awesome 4002, Brandon Walsh, Just Call Me Ender, Super Nuclear, I really can't think of a name. That's the best name I can think of. JD211, Dark Knight 1838. Alutron, Squidtard's evil cousin, one of the many Squidtard clones. Echo Rebel EX. Justin Rose, Mario and Sonic Films, Expietre 125, MSU Detroit Fan, Hendon Hooker Stand, Nick Fury 55, Citrus, I think Joshua George 7015, Mr. Polly, ESMN, Rutherford County Football. Avery Johnson, Strawberry Lemonade. That's a name. Sec Ball. Oh, here's our first super chat of the day. Not JFKH, $5 super chat. My hot take is that NIL is good for the game. The problem is the execution, and I agree with that. Wholeheartedly, I agree with that because as I'm sure everybody knows, NIL has completely changed the college football game, and in a lot of cases, it's definitely changed how what coaches are focused on when it comes to their focus in recruiting. And that it's been a big problem in college football. Not the idea, because I've always thought that players should be paid for their experience, their time on the field, because they're putting a lot. I mean, they are. This is basically like a job because they're putting so much time and effort into playing the sport. So I have no problem with them getting paid. But the issue is when you're paying players millions and millions of dollars. And this is the end result. So, yeah, NIL, good, execution, horrifically bad. And a lot of that is due to the fact that the NCAA is as useful as a sandpaper condom. I could stand up right now, rub one out, and the pile of things I can't say on the table would be a better cognitive thought than the NCAA's organization and what they're doing. So, I'm not surprised by it the slightest that they screwed this one up. And what's funny is that they're probably going to try and revoke this. They're going to try and go back and fix it, remove NIL or whatever, because it's too late to do that now. You're so far gone because we've gotten to a point where now colleges are literally paying players. So it's far too late to change what has already been made. You kind of just have to accept it as reality at this point. The game has changed, and that's really all there is to it. Obates 2002 with the $2 super chat says Akron will go 12-0 despite having a bowl ban. You see, we're gonna get. I'm guessing we're gonna get a lot of that tonight. People just coming in and being like, this group of 5 team that has absolutely zero talent is gonna go 12-0. The trolls, you gotta love them. Yeah, well. That would be funny if Akron went 12-0 and then just didn't go to a bowl game. Raise a whole lot of stuff about the group of 5. The group of 5, they're getting unfair treatment by the NCAA or the College Football Playoff Committee. Thing is, I didn't even realize this, but it's the truth. With the College Football Playoffs and how they're ordered now, it's straight seeding, which means that, even if you don't win your conference, if you're still number 4, you're going to get a bye. And I always thought that was pretty interesting. But what's so funny about that is the only conference champions that are going to be in the playoffs for sure is the top 5 conference champions. That does not include Power 4. So you could have the Big Ten, the Big Ten, the SEC, and the ACC. So yes, those 3 conferences. And then say like a MAC team goes 12-0. Wins their championship game, and now there's 13-0. So you got the MAC champion there. And then say like a Sun Belt team does it, goes undefeated, and then you got your 5th. And the reason I haven't excluded the Big 12 from this example is that say the Big 12 just beats the ever-living shit out of each other just like they did last year, and the conference champion is like 9-3 or something like that, kind of like how Clemson was in the ACC. Do you think they'd put in a 3-loss Big 12 team or an undefeated MAC or Sun Belt team? I think they'd put the Sun Belt team in. And that could raise a scenario where the Big 12 gets excluded from a 12-team playoff, which would be hilarious in hindsight, but then you'd realize that the playoff committee would get so much backlash for it that they'd be like, all right, got to go to 14 teams now. Maybe this time the Big 12 can get in, and that'll just raise even more problems. Jackson LeBeouf, thank you for the $5 super chat, says transfer portal and frequent roster churn is far more detrimental to the sport than NIL is. Yeah, see, this is the problem, and this is exactly right. NIL on its own is not too much of a force, but when you balance that out with the transfer portal, especially when players do not have any sort of disadvantage to doing it, then yes, it does raise a huge problem, because it used to be, and I don't know if it was like this back then, but this is how it absolutely should be, is when you hit the transfer portal and go on to another school, you lose your ability to redshirt or a year of eligibility. Because if that was in mind, you're going to lose your red shirt even for injuries, or you're going to lose a year of eligibility for hitting the transfer portal, it probably won't convince all players to suddenly, stick with their school, because you do have outlanding issues. Like today, most players going into the transfer portal are just doing it for the bag and nothing else. But you do have examples, kind of like how it was in the old days, where there is a player that is extremely unsatisfied with the program he's at, whether it's because of the coaching staff or something else completely outside of the football game, and they want to hit the transfer portal. But I think all the consequences should be balanced out evenly. And if there were consequences to hitting the transfer portal, a lot of these players that are thinking about just going for the bag, they are going to think twice about doing it. JD211 with the $2 super chat says Louisville goes 11-1, loses to Clemson but wins the ACC. That's a bold take, but considering how Tank Conference is, it's not exactly the most insane take I've heard. You know what? I want to check and see, because I want to see what their schedule looks like. Automatically, I don't think that's happening, because, well, yes, like you mentioned, they do play Clemson, but they play some really tough games. For example, they play Pittsburgh on the road. And Pittsburgh's a team on high on this season. I really like Eli Holstein. They've got a pretty well-rounded defense. Pittsburgh's going to cause some problems this season, I think, for a lot of these teams. So I could definitely see Louisville dropping that one. But the other one, and this is what a lot of people think is going to be the team that matches up against Clemson in the ACC Championship, and that's Miami. And guess where Louisville goes? They go on the road at Miami. Now, they do get a bye week beforehand, which does help. But Miami, I think, is the second most talented team in the ACC. Because the problem was with the Miami last year, even if you do think Carson Beck is a downgrade from Cam Ward, which, I don't think there's anybody on the face of the earth that's saying that Carson Beck is better than Cam Ward. You might be an absolute lobotomite if you think that. But the problem with Miami's team last year was not their quarterback or their offense in general. It was the fact that their defense, specifically their DBs, were as useful as a sandpaper condom, could not stop anybody. And even as shit tier Cal's offense was, they were just destroying Miami through the air. But now Miami has gotten a bunch of guys through the transfer portal, most of them in the secondary. So I think they're going to be a much more well-rounded team this season. And yeah, Louisville's going to have to get through them in order to get to that ACC championship. Unless if Mario does what Mario does best, and that's fold in the biggest moments. Not JFKH with the $5 super chat says another one is that unless there is a cakewalk playoff, the SEC won't make it to the Final Four. So you're saying that the SEC won't have a team. Oh, no, you're not saying that. What you're saying is that, but when we get to the semifinals and the playoffs, that none of those teams will be SEC. That's bold. Now, in most cases, I would agree with you on that, because think about how the SEC is right now. It is a complete and utter mess. Other than Texas and Alabama, which I think are the two strongest teams in that conference, you go down the list and, you got them, and then who else do you have after that? Obviously people are going to say Georgia, but, the situation with their quarterback could be iffy. People are saying Tennessee, but they're going to do what they usually do and fold on the road slate, especially to Florida and Alabama. Some people are saying Florida. Some people are saying DJ Lagway is going to take Florida to the promised land this year. And if that were the truth, you can expect Billy Napier to be around for a little while. But yeah, this comment, though, implies that Texas loses. This comment implies, because the Texas is most certainly making the playoffs. I think we can all agree on that. All right, Sean Pinkerton, $5 super chat. Seeing that Illinois' Big Ten schedule is almost softer than Charmin besides Ohio State, I say Illinois goes to the Big Ten title versus Ohio State at 11-1. So you're predicting Illinois to go 11-1 this season. Let's check out Illinois' schedule. And yeah, from what I know, it is pretty much a cakewalk. Now, all right. Well, I'm gonna say this. I'll put this on the screen so that you guys can see it because this is important. This is important to know right here. He's not wrong, first of all. Compared to some of the Big Ten schedules that we've seen, this is definitely one of the more easier ones I've seen on the schedule, or for the Big Ten in general. But there's some tricky games on here. Very, very, very tricky games. The most tricky one for me, now, they do face Ohio State. Most people, yeah, like you said, they're going to lose that game. But there are some tricky games, starting with this one right here. At Duke, Week 2. Oh, go back. Yeah, Week 2 versus Duke on the road. Lest we forget that Duke actually had a pretty good season last year. And, you know, they paid more money for Daria Minsa than anybody's ever paid. So they're putting a lot of weight on him. Duke could have a pretty good team this year, like a very, very well-rounded team. If you were to pick anybody to make the ACC championship over Miami and Clemson, then Duke would be a good option because they've got a really well-rounded team. So that could be a tough one. So 11-1, I don't think that's a possibility for Illinois. But the good news is this is not a conference game. So even if they do wound up losing to Duke, they could win the rest of these Big Ten games. Like Indiana, I think, is going to be a tough one, but I do think Indiana will take a step back after last year. I think they really, really got lucky. I don't think it was necessarily a fluke, but I did think they got very, very lucky with how their schedule lined up. They don't get that same fortune this time. But yeah, USC, Washington could be potentially tough. I have no idea what Jed the Fish has got playing this season. Rutgers, I'm not so sure. Wisconsin's in a really bad spot this season. This very well potentially could be Luke Fickell's final year. And then Maryland and Northwestern, kind of just your typical Big Ten fodder. So Illinois, while it is definitely a cakewalk compared to some other Big Ten schedules, it's definitely not the easiest schedule I've ever seen. I'll say that. Viper Technician, $10 super chat, much appreciated, says Terrence Carter Jr. is the next Michael Crabtree. Watch many of the Louisiana games, I think, and App State game was very reminiscent. Definitely those tackle breaks, tippy toe into the end zone. I like Terrence Carter. I thought he had a really good season last year, and you know, with how things are panning out, I mean, let's see. So 2024 with the Raging Cajuns, see 48 receptions, 689 reception yards, 4 touchdowns. He's pretty good. He's definitely not bad. Texas Tech. To me, there is absolutely zero excuse for Texas Tech to not at least finish this season with 9 wins. They have got one of the most well-rounded teams because they picked up more than anybody in the transfer portal. They picked up a lot of really, really good talent, both on offense, both on defense. If they somehow screw this up, the Joey Maguire should be he should be on the hot seat going into 2026. That's what I think. He's got one of the most talented, probably the most talented team in the Big 12. There's absolutely no excuse, in my opinion, for Texas Tech to come up short this year. None. Looking at their schedule real fast, I mean, yeah, absolutely no excuse. If they fall apart, then I'm not going to know what to think about Texas Tech. I'll never believe in them again because I'm actually a high believer in Texas Tech this season. Shocker, I know. I'm high on the favorite of the Big 12, but with all the talent they've brought in, with the transfer portal class, it's quite literally impossible not to ride on the Red Raiders this year. Jackson LeBeouf with the $10 or $5 super chat, much appreciated, says, I think for an ACC dark horse, Georgia Tech, despite a tough schedule, should be a top favorite to make the title game. Well, top favorite, I disagree, but dark horse, absolutely agree. Georgia Tech is definitely a force to be reckoned with in the the ACC this year. Haynes King, one of my favorite quarterbacks. He's been such a fun watch from last year. He's probably one of the funnest quarterbacks I've got to see, along with Jamal Haynes. Georgia Tech is going to have a really good offense this year. They are. They're going to be a struggle to beat when it comes to, the shootout games that they're in. It's going to be really tough to come across that. But Georgia Tech suffers from a lot of the similar problems that Miami suffered from the previous year, which is that despite the fact that they're going to have a good offense in the ACC, maybe a great offense, their secondary is the biggest concern. That is the biggest question going into them for 2025. If it improves by a significant margin, then Georgia Tech could very well wound up being in that spot for the ACC championship against probably Clemson. But if it doesn't, then they're going to have some losses. Top that off with the fact that Georgia Tech has an extremely brutal schedule. Again, though, for when you're talking about conference championships, games like they got to play Notre Dame and Georgia. Those games don't matter when going into, into the ACC championship. If I'm right, I think they do play Notre Dame. I'm pretty sure they do. Oh, they don't. My bad. I was thinking of somebody else. Okay, they don't play Notre Dame, but they do play Colorado at the start of the season. And Colorado's an interesting team this year. I'm really wondering how far they're going to fall off, if any, now that they've lost. Because people call them the Travis Hunter merchants, and they might be. But now that they lost him and Shador, off to the Cleveland Browns, I really wonder how Colorado is going to pan out this year. And a lot of people are saying that this is Deion's last year, and would not be the least bit surprised because I guarantee he's thinking about going to the Browns. Georgia Tech's worst enemy will always be the schedule. Yeah. Well, when you have to play Georgia on top of another Power 5, most of the time pretty good opponent, yeah, really, really tough schedule. Because besides Gardner Webb and Temple, there are no gimmies on that schedule at all. They got to play Clemson in the regular season. They got to go on the road against Duke. They got to play Syracuse at home, Boston College on the road. They also got to end the season with Pitt before going on to play Georgia. And not only that, but, this is something that I heard from C-Dog and Rec Talk. First of all, shout out to Rec Talk. He invited me on his show last night. If y'all haven't watched the College Football Weekly show, great show. Had a great time over there yesterday. Shout out to him. But they're both Georgia Tech fans. They were talking about how they think they are going to beat Georgia this season. The problem with that is, and this really sucks for Georgia Tech, is that they don't get the benefit of facing Georgia at home. The one time they actually have a really good chance to actually end up beating them, they don't even get the opportunity to play them at home. Instead, they're playing at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. So, and as we all know, that's like Georgia's freaking home field, basically. They thrive in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So, unless it's Alabama we're talking about, when they're playing against. But despite that, though, yeah. Power to Tart area, I think Texas wins. Texas wins it all, and Michigan State makes a bowl game at 8-4. Michigan State, yeah. I mean, I could agree with that. Jonathan Smith has done some pretty good things at Michigan State already, but last year I thought was a disappointing year for State. I think and looking at their schedule, they do have some pretty tough games. Obviously, they got to play Michigan. They still got to play Penn State. Now, they do get both of those at home, but we can just go ahead and write those down as losses. They got to play Boston College, but they do get them at home. The USC on the road, Nebraska on the road, UCLA at home. Yeah, so they've got a tough schedule coming up, and they're going to have to rely on some of these other teams to fall off in order for them to get to that 8-4 range. Because, let's see, their 4 losses, Penn State, Michigan, that's 2. Say they lose because they got to play at Nebraska, too, so I guess that you can write that up as your 3rd loss. And then you can only lose 1 more between Boston College, UCLA, Minnesota on the road, Indiana on the road, Iowa on the road. Iowa could be potentially a tough team to face because of their defense, because Michigan State kind of suffers from a lot of the same problems. They ain't got no offense. So we'll see how that pans out for them. Yeah, how about UNLV? First good season under Dan Mullen, but quickly falls apart due to defensive recruiting, is what the prediction is there. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, he did the same thing at Florida, started out strong, and then just crashed at the end of the season due to defensive recruiting and injuries. Yeah. That's so on par for Mr. Development, because he's as great as that as he is anything else. Dan Mullen is not a good recruiter, and that definitely shows at the latter half of the season, because he goes into that second half of the season and they start losing a bunch of games. We saw it all the years he was at Florida. UCF, due to their student enrollment, alumni, money base, and location for recruitment, make them the best prepared to become the new Texas of the Big 12. Scott Frost will redeem himself. That is a very interesting take, because right now they've got a big hole to get themselves out of. And thing is about Scott Frost is that he doesn't have the blessing of playing in a G5 conference like he did the last time he was at Central Florida. He came from Central Florida, went to a power conference, and couldn't win a game. And a lot of that was due to the fact that they couldn't close out any of their games. Nebraska, they're the best 3-win team in the history of history. Congratulations on that award. Pat yourself on the back for that one. Yeah, that's like saying Love Tyrant is the best 3 out of 10 anime. But anyway, back to the conversation at point. They do have a pretty big hole to get themselves out of, and I think that's going to show this season. It's still Gus's players that he recruited that are going to be on that roster. And besides, the Big 12, I do think they're going to win some games because it is the Big 12 after all. They've got some tough ones to play. You know, did you guys know that UCF plays North Carolina in a neutral site? Well, they don't. It's not a neutral site. It's actually a home game for Central Florida, but it's a non-con game at home against the Tar Heels. That is going to be must-watch cinema right there. Scott Frost hosting good old Jordan Hudson's wife in in Bill Belichick. As for the national title game, says Jackson LaBeouf with the $10 super chat, much appreciated. I think it'll be a rematch from week 1, Clemson versus LSU for the national title game. It's tough for me to pick a winner, though. Well, that is a really tough one. Clemson, I definitely could see making the national championship. They're going to have an easy route, I think, through the ACC. I think they're going to keep their injuries on the down low because of it. And I think they'll have an easy ride up until they make the playoffs. And then from there, who knows how that'll pan out. They might come in as the 1 seed. Who knows? So I could definitely see Clemson. LSU is a really tough team to decipher this year, because just like every other year, they have the talent to be on that stage. LSU is one of the best teams just in terms of overall talent. LSU, one of the best teams. The problem is, and I keep saying this, and I'm going to keep saying it for as long as he's there, you have Brian Kelly. And he is known, like, it's his thing now. That's what he does. Pisses himself in the big games. We saw it last year. We saw it every other year before that. This dude, Brian Kelly, he had Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels on his roster, averaging 50 points a game. He also had Harold Perkins in that same year. Harold Perkins, one of the best defensive players we've seen, and Jaden Daniels, one of the best offensive players we've seen in a long time. 9-3. So, I mean, it's what he does best. He pisses himself in the big games. If you're going to predict LSU to make the national championship, you have to predict that Brian Kelly is not going to be Burger King and fold in the big moments. And that is a very, very hard prediction to make. Sean Pinkerton with the $5 super chat says, I mean, whoever the non-Power 4 conference champion is probably will be a 10-plus win team. So why not Marshall, who was 10-3 in 2024 as Sunbelt, they repeat as Sunbelt champs? I'll give you the reason as to why they won't do that. Here. You want the reason? I'll give you a reason right now. Other than West Virginia, there is not a team that has suffered more because of the transfer portal. Let me see, because I want to see. I think the number was like 60-something players who hit the transfer portal. Like, it was that many. I'm trying to look it up and see how many players they had hit the portal just in overall numbers. But, I mean, it was absolutely insane. They're bringing in a completely brand new team. And unless you're saying that all of those players that they got from the portal, which they didn't really even get that many. A lot of the guys that they brought in are recruits, freshmen that are going to get starting time. They're just kind of going to get thrown to the wolves. So, yeah, Marshall, Marshall could have a very, very bad year this season. Super Nuclear with the the $2 super chat says LSU goes 7-5 and loses to Vanderbilt. Now, if that happens, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. I don't think BK lasts much longer. I think Burger King is going to get thrown out. LSU is one of those teams that has pretty much zero tolerance for anything like that. So if that's how that goes, then you can go ahead and kiss to his job goodbye. Here, I'm going to remove this. People are going to get mad about it, but it's the way it goes. I had to remove the push-up counter. I've been doing too many of those as of late. And I was going to remove it a while back because I've been doing so many and it's almost impossible to keep up. But once I get into college football season, if I'm racking up, like $300 in terms of super chats every single stream, I won't be able to get up and stream anymore, and that's going to be a problem. So, but I will hit the gritty for my buddy JFKH who sent another super chat. Hit the gritty, you got it, buddy. You got it. This is something I do for every $50, as you can tell. You've never seen someone hit the gritty better than me. You can't even see my full face on here, and that's going to be a problem. You gotta see my face whilst I hit the gritty like a dumbass. That's the right foot. Ooh. 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 Okay, enough of that. We'll just leave it at 37. I'll hit the gritty again if we get more. All right, Squid, I have one question for you. How do you think the Kansas Jayhawks do without Oklahoma and Texas in that division? Pretty much the same as they did last year. I thought Kansas was going to thrive because of how well they performed the year previous, and they just have not. They really, really fell off from last season, and, it's Kansas. It's hard to recruit there. It's hard to get really much of anything going through even the portal. So it doesn't surprise me that Kansas has really struggled. But if they continue to struggle like that, Lance Leopold could be in a tough position. So I hope they get it fixed. I hope they get it together. They are the Big 12 after all. All of their games are winnable. That's the thing about the Big 12. Every single game on your schedule is a winnable game. No matter if you're playing Colorado or Texas Tech or anybody else, every single game on your schedule is winnable. So as long as Kansas continues to do that, maybe makes a bowl game at 6-6, I think they'll be just fine because they could have a year down the line where, they wound up winning 10 games and making the playoffs. But that's what teams like Kansas have turned into, basically, is a team that's sort of going to be middle of the pack, down at the bottom some years, most years. And then maybe, they have a year where they go up, win 10, 11 games, and make the playoffs every 10 years or so. That's what Indiana turned into. Indiana's mostly a bottom feeder in the Big Ten. But then, some years they wound up going on and winning the... Not winning the conference, but winning 10, 11 games. So you never know. Bill Belichick brings in success for North Carolina, starting with a 7-5 or 8-4 season for 2025, and with future recruitment success could turn into a future conference and national contender. Wow, that is bold. That is bold, really, really bold, and probably the craziest take I've heard so far because. Well, North Carolina, let's just be honest. The way they're turning into for me right now, it looks like they're treading towards being your 2025 clown of the season. The mess going on over there right now between Jordan Hudson, all of the situations, the emails, her on the sideline, being on the sideline, and then suddenly she's not on the sideline anymore, and the interview was just like, we're not going to talk about how we met. We're not going to do it. All of that is manifesting itself into what could potentially be your 2025 clown of the season. Because here's the thing about North Carolina is that say they win a bunch of games, then yes, all this outside noise immediately turns off because that's the most important thing. Bill Belichick's not there to be a sideshow and produce all of these stupid-ass clown shows and all this other dumb shit. The same thing Colorado was doing. They're not there to do that. They're there to win games. If Bill Belichick goes in there and he loses games, say he embarrasses himself sort of on the same level as Mac Brown was doing there, then the outside noise from all of the interference of Jordan Hudson and all that is going to become just even more louder than it has been, and the voices are going to get louder, and it's going to potentially turn into Belichick, getting fired in his first year. They've already been talking about it, inside sources saying, oh, he's going to get fired in year one. Now, I still think he has to have a bad year for that to happen, but with the outside noise happening, say some other big allegation comes out, because that's the thing. So what happened to Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern? He was already having bad years while he was at Northwestern, and then all of the hazing allegations come out, and now they're forced to can him. Same thing could potentially happen to Bill Belichick. Now, I don't think it's going to be anything relating to that, but, say something happens between him and Jordan. Jordan, she does another thing for attention, files a lawsuit or something like that. Who knows? Something like that happens, and Belichick could be in very, very hot water. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. I will very much be keeping an eye on that because they face TCU week 1 of the season. That is going to be a really big game for him because if he goes out and loses week 1 of the season to TCU, that outside noise, I guarantee you, becomes a whole lot louder off the bat. Sven Krusberg, by the way, much appreciate you, buddy, becoming an official soldier of Tardaria. Let me put you down here as an official member of Tardaria. See, here's the thing: when you type a new name, you have to move the text a little bit up, and that's irritating. But it is what it is. I'll figure that out. Kent State wins the Natty. Incredible take. Hear me out, guys. FSU's coaching staff collectively blow their brains out on the field for the halftime show after going 3-9. Yikes. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen, but Castellanos' dumbass yapping about beating Alabama certainly doesn't do you any good. Now, of course, when somebody asks you, how do you feel about the Alabama game, you're not supposed to go, well, we're going to lose. Game over. Yeah, we suck. We're not going to win that game. You're not supposed to do that, obviously. And nobody's pinning the blame on him for saying that they're going to beat Alabama. That's not the problem. The problem is that you've presented yourself as this absolute moron who's going into there thinking that we're just going to dominate Alabama. And then the comment about Nick Saban is what really is going to turn him into a lolcow for this year. Saying, Nick Saban's out there for Nick Saban can't save them anymore. Dumb ass. Kalen DeBoer has won everywhere he's been. Everywhere he's been. James Madison, Washington. He took Washington to the national championship. Went to Alabama, and they consider 9-3 a down year. He's going to start winning a bunch of games, and it's going to start with beating your sorry asses. I know that for a fact. It is going to be an absolute mess, a bloodbath down there in Tallahassee. They're doing the same damn thing they did last year. And then Hooker Stan with the $5 super chat says, Joey Aguilar will be a better quarterback than Nico and restores the Josh Heupel offense. Well, that's a very, very bold take. I'll say that much. And even if that's true, that's not going to do anything for Tennessee. Because, well, if it does, then that'll be absolutely huge. Because then I can pretend that we'll have a chance to beat Alabama and Florida. But I don't think there is enough trust in Joey Aguilar going into this season. I really don't. I don't think Heupel is going to have enough trust in him to just let him go out there and sling it, because he is so focused and enamored on not turning the ball over that he is willing to dumb down our offense to elementary school levels, especially on the road games. And you can't do that when you're facing your rivals, because your rivals don't care about, oh, we got to keep the turnovers down to a minimum. I mean, obviously they're thinking that, but what they're really thinking is, we are going to beat the ever-loving doo-doo out of you. That's what they care about. So they're going to be as aggressive as humanly possible facing their rivals. And if Tennessee comes out and does the same thing they do in all their road games, which is bubble screen, bubble screen, bubble screen. If you try that, you're gonna get the same result. Death. So I'm not so sure. I'll tell you guys this. For my final series before the College Football Chaos season starts, I'm doing this thing called Before the Chaos, and you can just sort of guess how that's going to pan out. It's me analyzing every power team going into this season with different videos for each conference, as you can imagine. And at the very end of my little preview that I'll do for each and every team, I'll give my prediction. And I'll be doing the same thing for everybody. But Tennessee's getting their own video. Tennessee will get their own video. I'm not going to do it with the SEC. I might talk about it a little bit, but I'm not going to, deep dive Tennessee like I'll do with everybody else. They're going to get their own video before the season begins, and I'm going to give my official prediction on Tennessee and how they're going to do, as well as everybody else, all the other power teams. Kentucky will go 2-10. Ooh, yikes. I want you all to pay attention to that Week 1 game Kentucky's got to play. They got to host Toledo, and Toledo is certainly no pushover. They could be a problem. They could absolutely wound up being a problem for Kentucky. You wouldn't think they would be, but they are. I'm telling you, they are going to be a problem. So, Kentucky could find themselves in a very, very awkward situation. Now, if they lose Week 1 to Toledo, which I don't think is necessarily happening, but if that does happen, holy shit, they might send Mark Stoops to the sun before Week 2. Nico lets UCLA to a 10-win season. Stop. That's all I could that's all I could read. Did you put your brain underwater? Where is it? Go back and get it. Georgia Tech finally beats Georgia. That's a good prediction to make, because I think Georgia Tech, this is definitely their best shot since the last time they beat Georgia to actually pull it off. But again, it really, really sucks that this game just so happens to be in Atlanta, but not at Georgia Tech's home field. It's in Mercedes-Benz. And that's, they're doing it for renovations, and that really pisses me off. That sucks for Georgia Tech. I would have rather they played that game at home. Ohio State endures a 9-3 nightmare and misses the playoffs after Julian Sayin struggles at the start, and they lose to Texas, Michigan, and Penn State. We got fire. It's going to be right back to, we got fire. We got fire. We're going to be hearing a whole lot of that, because that's exactly what Ohio State fans are doing right before they knock the shit out of Tennessee. You know what they were doing? Fire! We got fire! The whole thing. So definitely expect for that to be the case if that's how that winds up going. And they might do it. They might fire Ryan Day for going 9-3 and missing the playoffs with a roster like that. That'd be the biggest waste of money. That's what I think. Kind of like how Oregon, $23 million just to get railed. You know the song. Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think about how Oregon spent more money on their roster than Ohio State. But Ohio State's getting all the strays because they're the team that actually wound up going on to win the national championship. If anything, Oregon should feel way more embarrassed for not only spending more money, but the moment they enter the playoffs, they get absolutely mutilated. So that's why they're not a king of the conference. I could go through my comments from the Big Ten video with you guys, but a lot of them a lot of them were about the thumbnail and the way I designed that video because, I had it with Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State being the kings of the conference, and then everybody else is the fodder that's down there in the fire somewhere. And immediately, a lot of the people came here, and most of them were Oregon fans with, why the hell was Oregon not here? Oregon should be king of the conference. They won the Big Ten last year. And then what'd they do? They went into the playoffs and died. So yeah, that's why they're not king of the conference. Win a national championship for the Big Ten, and maybe we'll have a conversation about that. Yeah, Oregon spent all that money on uniforms. I'm telling you, until they win a national championship, they need to come out and wear those doo-doo brown uniforms. They don't exist yet, but they should. That's what I think. They should bring in doo-doo brown Oregon uniforms and wear them until they win a national championship. Is that College Ball 26 music in the background? Yes, it is. I figured I'd just have it as ambience in the back while I'm talking to you guys. Hot take, Miami getting on the 7th floor. That is such a meme. Hey, I'm going to say this, and you guys make sure I keep my promise on this one. If Miami makes the playoffs, which is a definite possibility, their Get Out video will be centered around that song. Keep me up to that. Keep me up to date on that. Make sure I keep my promise on that. Jackson LeBeau for the $5 super chat, much appreciated, says, I think a lot of the major teams in the last few years take a step back due to first-time starting quarterbacks. Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, and Alabama. Alabama is a team, the only exception to that rule, because Ty Simpson has seen a lot more actual playing time than the other three. Well, Arch Manning's seen some, but the only reason Arch Manning would come on the field is just to do a QB run on the outside. That's it. They'd literally just come in and then he'd scramble. Everybody in the field knows he's going to run the football a lot. So, but Bam, I feel like, is the only exception to that rule because of all the talent around Ty Simpson. I think he's going to thrive, especially with having Ryan Williams there. Ohio State could definitely, and the only reason I'd say Ohio State would take a step back is because they won the national championship. It's extremely hard to go back to back. It is. Georgia could do it. Fuck Georgia. In a year of uncertainty, there's one thing we do know in college football. Texas A&M is going 8-4 again. Yes, that is yes. The sky is blue. Listen to this. Tech sucks. Loses week 1 to Ohio State, gets blown out by Georgia, and will lose by a field goal when time expires at home against Texas 8-4. That would make sure they don't see any playoffs. Oof. Wow, that'd be that'd be absolutely brutal. I really don't think that happens, though. I don't think they're getting blown out by Georgia, even if they are playing at Athens. I don't think they lose to... I think that Ohio State game obviously is going to be cinema. But I could definitely see Texas pulling that one out. I really could. I could see them going on the road just like they did with Michigan and beating Ohio State on the road. And then the Texas 8-4 comment. I mean, again, wouldn't be shocked because it is a huge rivalry game, but Texas is going to go in there as a huge favorite. They're going to win at least one of those games, I think. And if they go in at 10-2, then they're most certainly making the playoffs. If Kentucky does lose to Toledo, I might fight someone. Is it going to be your coach, Mark Stoops? You guys have been keeping around for so long. We need to find you some motivation. That's what we need to find you. I need more. I need more sound bites. Is what I need, because I got this one. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. My stream deck is like the Iowa offense. It's got to load.
Pick up your shovel and get back to the coal mines, baby. Go Big Orange.
Tell them like it is. Ohio State would be the greatest dynasty in cultural history as Ryan Day retires as a 6-time national champion. Are we just saying shit to say shit now? Not JFKH $2 Super Chat says Ohio State Michigan will be one of the best games of the year. Well, more often than not, it always is. It's the most hyped up rivalry game. I can't remember the last time Game Day actually went to a game in Week 14 that wasn't the Ohio State-Michigan game. So, yeah, definitely will end up being one of the best games. But I think an underrated game that's going to be happening at that same time is going to be the Palmetto Bowl. I keep saying it. I feel like game day is actually going to go there this season because I'm pretty high on South Carolina, and I'm also high on Clemson. The only problem is I'm also high on Michigan and Ohio State. So they should go to the Palmetto Bowl is what I would think, but I imagine that they're going to go right back to the game. Notre Dame is the make or break game for the Aggies. Notre Dame's the make or break game for a lot of teams. They play Miami at week 0. And that's going to be or week 1, I mean. And that's going to be a really, really fun game to watch. I think Miami is going to have a lot to prove there. Carson Beck is going to try and get his revenge, even though he didn't really play in the game against Notre Dame at Georgia. He's going to try and get his revenge. You guys, this is something I thought that was really, really funny. Carson Beck's goals for the season last year, you know what they were? Win the Heisman, win the national championship, and I forget the other one, but it was just something overly ridiculous and something that wasn't going to happen for him. It's like, Can we set our expectations a little lower this time? I got you. Carson Beck, I got you. You're wondering, what you need some new expectations for 2025? I got you. Listen to this. 1. Win against Georgia Tech, even though you don't play him this year. 2. Win the Pop-Tart Bowl. And 3, motivate your defense enough to not give up 40 points a game. If you can do all three of those things, then yeah, you'll have my good graces. Nebraska has a ridiculously easy schedule. They go 11-1, only losing to Penn State. Well, that's a bold claim considering Nebraska is, well, Nebraska. You know, it took everything they had just to get to a winning season this year. So let's go ahead and check in. I want to see what their schedule looks like, because I am curious to see how easy their schedule is. Well, here it is. So they start out the year with Cincinnati. They face 2 whatevers. You know, nobody cares about that. Michigan, that's going to be a good game. I could definitely see game day going in Ann Arbor for that one. Or no, it's in Lincoln. Never mind. It's okay. So that's going to be a really, really good game, though. Again, like I mentioned, I'm high on Michigan this year. I think their quarterback that they've got, who is going to be starting this year, the one that they got from LSU, flipped from LSU over to Michigan, he's going to be really good this year. I've got a lot of hope in him. I think he's going to be the best quarterback Michigan's had since J.J. McCarthy. And, well, the only problem with that is I think Michigan's going to need a run game, and I think they've got that taken care of. I think Khalil Mullings is returning, so yeah, that'll go a long way. So that could very well be a very tough game for Nebraska. Michigan State, Maryland, Minnesota, Northwestern, USC, also a potentially tough game right here. They're pulling in a really, really good recruiting class, and while that may not do anything for the first year, that could do something in the future. It could do something for depth, though. So potentially tough game right here. And then, of course, here's the Penn State game and Iowa. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. That is a pretty easy schedule, all things considered. But I don't trust Nebraska to win all the games they're supposed to. And I don't think anybody else does either. I don't even think you do. They're Nebraska. And I'm not just saying that because, oh, yeah, they're just Nebraska. They're just going to suck every single year forever. No, I don't think that. It's that they've had a tendency of losing some of these games that they're not supposed to. While I do think they're going to take a step forward with Matt Rule and Dylan Raiola, I don't see them going beyond anywhere near 9 wins. Because I think they could potentially win some of these games. Say they beat Michigan, start out 4-0, then maybe they do wound up winning 10 games. They're a very, very hard team to decipher. I'll say that much. UMass versus Kent State would be the greatest game to ever be played in the history of college football this season, says Obates 2002. Well, you know, what's so funny about that is that that's not, I mean, well, that's obviously an unrealistic take. That's not a take that's going to 100% not happen. UMass and Kent State could be like one of those games where they, you know, the final score is 70-63 in 7 overtimes. And if that does happen, then yes, there you go. One of the greatest games to ever be played in the history of college football. Wouldn't that just be funny? That would be hilarious. And it would be better. It will be better if it wounds up with Kent State winning the game. That's what I think. Because that will definitely be covered in College Football Chaos when Kent State finally wins a game. So we'll see when that's going to happen. He better be Squidtard Sports. We didn't pay Underwood $3 million a year for 4 years to not be elite. He better be better than J.J. McCarthy. Yeah. The problem is, who's he going to throw to? That's my biggest concern for Bryce Underwood is who is he going to throw to? Because Michigan's not going to have a problem running the football. I don't think that's going to be a problem. But they're going to run into a team that's going to be able to shut down the run, and then they're going to have to be forced to pass. And my only issue with that is, who's he going to throw to? Squidtard, in an era of wacky bowl game sponsorships, what would be your ideal wacky mid-tier bowl game idea? The Squidtard Bowl. Anytime anybody asks me what my bowl game idea would be, the Squidtard Bowl. Hands down, no doubt about it, Squidtard Bowl. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say that every single time. Finish the sentence. Mississippi State schedule is something I do not have pulled up, which I need to look at in order to decipher what they're going to be. Because that's important. Thing is about Mississippi State is that their schedule is always going to be hard because the fodder in question is them. They're the fodder. Because, that's the thing. Like, a lot of people say that these teams that suck, their schedule is hard, and that's because they're one of the teams that suck. So they're pretty much the fodder for all the teams that they're playing against to have an easier schedule. And no, Mississippi State's schedule is not easy at all. It's extremely brutal. Remember, they got to play Arizona State. Now, they do host them at home, so maybe that does something, but Sam Leavitt's coming back, and even if they don't have Cam Skivety, Arizona State's not going to be a bad team. So they do start out the year with Southern Miss, and I think that won't be pretty easy. Alcorn State and Northern Illinois. Hey, Mississippi State week 4, they got to play Northern Illinois. Ding, ding, ring the bell. Somebody check it in your Notre Dame, man. They need all the help they can get. But yeah, then they start the conference slate, and they start out with Tennessee and Starkville. And funny thing about that is, I don't think it's that far-fetched that Mississippi State wins that game, because Josh Heupel has a tendency every single year of blowing one of these road games that he's not supposed to. And they haven't announced the game time yet. It's anywhere between 3:30 to 8. And if it's a 3:30 game, I'm going to go ahead and say Tennessee wins. But if it is a night game, then I'll leave out the door. Arizona goes 2-10, beating Hawaii and Weber State, and then losing the next 10, closing with a blowout loss against Arizona State on the road. I mean, again, you're not wrong. Losing McMillan is an extremely tough loss, because McMillan, I mean, he was definitely their biggest playmaker, without a doubt. They were the McMillan merchants. I said the Fafita and McMillan combo was the thing about Arizona from last year. That's what they relied on. That was their offense. And now that they don't have that, yeah. Funny thing is, Arizona's not been recruiting bad. I know that for a fact. They've actually been recruiting pretty well in terms of who they got. But yeah, Noah Fafita, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. They also picked up cover your ears, Wisconsin fans. Braden Locke. They got Braden Locke out of the portal. And this, yeah, he's not even the starter, and nor should he be. I don't even know why they bothered picking him up. I mean, yeah, sure, he brings depth to the table, but what else does he bring? Himself? Woo! He's not good. Then again, though, I'll say this: Braden Locke, probably the best quarterback Wisconsin had, because they traded this man. They took him out, and then they brought in Tyler Van Dyke, and then they got rid of Tyler Van Dyke, and you know who they brought in? Billy freaking Edwards. You can't create a bigger pile of AIDS than what Wisconsin's offense is going to be in 2025. So I'm pretty confident in this prediction. I think this is Luke Fickell's last season at Wisconsin. I don't know what went wrong, whether it was a recruiting issue, a depth issue, not being able to use his offense the way he did at Cincinnati, but it is such a full-on, full-fledged collapse from what I thought I was going to see with Luke Fickell, and I don't think it's getting any better. They just don't have the offensive material to do anything with that. Texas State will get more wins than Texas A&M. Texas State, no. I'm thinking Texas State, they transitioned to the Pac-12 in 2026, right? So they don't play a Pac-12 schedule. They play the other one. Syracuse will collapse and miss a bowl game. That is a prediction I've actually heard from a few people. I think a lot of people are riding on Kyle McCord. They're saying that Kyle McCord made up such a significant part of the Syracuse offense. And the thing is about them, though, is that they picked up what I thought was a pretty good quarterback. Ricky Collins, he was at LSU. He was behind Nussmeier in the depth chart. He transfers. Now he's at Syracuse. And, of course, the issue with them is that he's going to be their offense. You know, they don't have the run game. Yassine Willis, I don't know how he's going to do. They're probably going to start Will Nixon. He's a senior, and if they care about seniority, then he'll probably get the start over Yassine Willis. But if not, then despite all that, they still don't have a run game. They're going to be relying heavily on the passing game, and it's going to be on the arm of, I'm sure it's going to be on the hands of Darrell Gill Jr. or Emmanuel Ross. I think Rich Rod will BS his way to the Big 12 title. That's the thing about the Big 12, man. It's not that far-fetched to say anybody's going to make it. You could come in here and say Kansas or Kansas State or BYU, even without Retzloff. You could say any of those teams are going to make the playoffs, and it's not the most far-fetched thing you've ever heard. It really isn't, because you never know how it's going to go. Specifically last year, I mean, we got to think about this for a second. Arizona State was projected to finish dead last in the conference, with 16 teams, by the way. And then what happens? They wound up blowing everybody out, except for Cincinnati for whatever reason, but they end up beating everybody, dominate Iowa State in the Big 12 title game, and go into the playoffs. And not only that, but they managed to go in there and nearly beat Texas. It took a collapse in overtime for Texas to get the jump on them. So all that to say, there's no telling what we're going to see from the Big 12 this year. Hot take, I think Mark Stoops is fired. John Summerall takes over at Kentucky. That would be a good pickup if they did that. And I think if they were to fire Mark Stoops this year, that would be a pretty good pickup. I could definitely see that. But the problem is, I just don't know if they're actually going to go through with firing Mark Stoops. He has been one of the best things to happen in Kentucky football for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been born, probably further away than that. And it's going to be really, really tough, I think, for Kentucky to actually let him go, considering their expectations in sports revolve all around basketball. I mean, that's a proven fact. With Kentucky, they care way more about their basketball program than they do their football. I think every Kentucky fan in here could admit that as well. So I don't know if they're actually going to go through with it. Now, if they do have a really, really bad season, like most people think they will, including me, then yes, I do think they get rid of him. So, but if he ends up like 5-7, 6-6, somewhere around that range, they're not getting rid of him. They aren't. Hey, you might call me crazy for saying this, but I have Notre Dame versus Arizona State in the national title game. What? Notre Dame is not that crazy. Notre Dame is bringing in a really good roster. Jeremiah Love's probably going to be a favorite for the Heisman in terms of running backs, but Arizona State's absolutely crazy. Where are you getting that from? A Cam Skibbity-less Arizona State, I don't think is making it anywhere near the national title game, and I don't even think they make the playoffs. I'm not really sure where you're pulling that from. That is absolutely crazy. Unless if you think Kyson Brown is that good of a running back, because remember, Arizona State, they put a lot of their power on Cam Skibbity last year. They were so heavily lenient on him. There's no way that's happening. Sam Levitt's not going to be able to carry that entire offense. I like Jalen Moss. I think he's going to do great things for him. I think they will continue to carry some sort of significant pieces of offense. But the issue is that losing Cam Skibity is going to make a huge impact on their schedule. Hot take, Vanderbilt beats Alabama and Tennessee. Yeah, okay. Sky must not be blue anymore. What in the hell are we doing? Vanderbilt beating Bama and Tennessee. Both of those games are at home for Alabama and Tennessee. I mean, if that does happen, give Diego Pavia the Nobel Peace Prize. Hot take, Big 12 is the best conference this year? That's not that bold, actually. From top to bottom, the Big 12 is probably the best conference, actually. Because they have so much less fodder in that conference because they're just beating the shit out of each other. It's something that the ACC, it's something that pretty much every other conference lacks. The SEC and the Big Ten especially. You have the Giants, and then you sort of go down the list, and then you have the fodder down there, the trash cans, and the whatever else. So the Big 12 doesn't necessarily even have that. They have a bunch of teams that are just going to continuously keep beating the piss out of each other up until they make it to the final game. So, yeah, that's really all that bold to say. Now, if you're saying they have the most talented teams then yeah, no, that's not true at all. In terms of talent composite, the SEC and the Big Ten blow them out of the water, not even close. Another take, LSU loses their season finale but wins the opener. Very, very bold take right there. That is one thing Brian Kelly has really, really sucked at, is that LSU cannot win a home opener at all. And they're not even against good teams either. You know, it's not like they're playing against the best of the best non-conference teams. They play Florida State, even back in 2022 when they finished out with 7 or 8 wins. I can't remember. I think Florida State finished out 8-4, 9-3. LSU was still the better team in that game, and they wound up losing that. You go back to the year before that. You got to go back all the way to 2019, the championship year, to find where LSU won their last home opener. 2020, they lose to Mississippi State. Turns out LSU was one of the worst teams in the conference that year. 2021, they lose to UCLA. 2022, Florida State again in 23, which Florida State was good that year, so that makes sense. And then last year, they lose to a 6-win USC team with Garrett Nussmeier. So, yeah, I'm not convinced they're going into Death Valley and knocking off Clemson, or fake Death Valley, excuse me. Forgot, LSU fans are very, very sensitive about Death Valley. If you call Clemson Death Valley, they're... Ryan Day will not get fired anytime soon. Oh, yeah, he saved his spot for big time. He saved a lot of spots. Lego NASCAR with a $2 super chat says, hot take, an unranked team makes the playoffs in 2026. Well, an unranked team, that would imply that we're looking at the, because we don't have a preseason top 25. That's kind of the problem. We don't have a preseason college football top 25 officially. We have our post-spring top 25 back in May. Let's see. We're gonna go through this real fast. So this is May the 8th. Post-spring, way too early top 25 rankings. Directly from ESPN. So Penn State, Clemson, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, LSU, Notre Dame, Oregon, Alabama, BYU, Illinois, Arizona State, South Carolina, Iowa State, SMU, Texas Tech, Indiana, Kansas, Florida, Michigan, Miami, Louisville, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma. So, give me a team from the list that I didn't name that's going to make the playoffs in 2025. That's probably pretty easy because it's probably pretty easy to do that because every single group of 5 team is not on there. So, you could literally just say Boise State again, and then that would probably fit the quota. Alabama misses the playoffs by a game, so they do the same thing they did last year, go 9-3, miss the playoffs barely, and then cry about strength of schedule and hypotheticals. So, great. Can't wait to listen to that again. Yeah. By the way, I take Alabama to win the national championship because Alabama is they're undefeated in hypotheticals, as we all know. Mike Norvell turns the ship around and Florida State contends for the ACC championship and a playoff spot. Bold prediction to say. They did do better out of the transfer portal than they did the year before, so I don't think they're going 2-10. But, you know, the thing is about them is that how much faith do you have in Gus Malzahn? Because that's going to be the big thing, I think, with Florida State, is how much do you kind of hope, how much do you cross your fingers and pray in regards to Florida State's offense this year with Gus Malzahn? That's what I want to know. Because it all depends on that, I think. Because their offense was abysmal last year. Pretty much, I mean, obviously their whole team was abysmal, but it's gonna come down to what they do with Gus Malzahn in the offense. And Castellano's putting a foot in his mouth and saying the dumb shit that he did with Alabama certainly does them no good. TCU to the playoffs again. The Horned Frogs. Hot take, Georgia is going to have a rough season, going to be a rebuild year. I certainly hope you're right about that. You know, people, other than Georgia, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you just love talking about my team. You just hate my team. I don't, unless you're the Georgia Bulldogs, the Alabama Crimson Tide, or the Florida Gators, I don't hate your team. I don't have some sort of hidden agenda against your team. Because I saw a lot of those comments on my Big Ten video. A lot of comments about that on my Big Ten video. By the way, we are less than 50 subscribers officially away from the big 15,000 subscriber mark. It's crazy to think about. Yeah, again, I love you guys for all the support that you've given to this channel. Y'all are all great people. Love each and every one of you guys. You're all wonderful people. And it's crazy to think that we're already here at the 15,000 mark. Stunning! Stunning revelation even. Sometimes I do love on my off time, like kind of like now, to go through and look at some of my past comments from my videos. And there's some interesting ones, I'll say that much. Here, let me show you guys. Because there are some extremely hilarious comments. Oh, see, I hate it when OBS does that. I'll pull it up. I'll pull up OBS. And then it'll because I have it on my secondary monitor. I don't even have it on my front monitor. But every time I pull it up, it does that. And that pisses me off. Okay. But yeah, some of these comments are just extremely hilarious. Let me see if I can zoom in. Here we go. That's much better. Okay. As a Penn State fan, I refuse to take them seriously until they beat Ohio State and Michigan in the same year. Yeah, there's some pretty funny comments. I mean, you could literally scroll through these for days. Purdue mentioned, shout out to K-State. Thanks for Will Howard. Please drop an A&M video. Here we go. Finding out you're a Vols fan made sense. This was just a massive cope. Cope about what? That's the thing. People act like if you're a certain fan of a certain team that suddenly everything you say is automatically irrelevant. See, this guy's a Tennessee fan. I guess every single thing he ever said in his lifetime is now suddenly irrelevant. He should just not be allowed to speak. That's why I love saying stuff like, and you can tell that he didn't watch the video. He just immediately said this the moment he opened it. I even said in the video, if you're using Tennessee as a way to cope with your own failures, then you're doing it wrong. You know, if me being a Tennessee fan is somehow making me wrong, I'm like, that doesn't make me wrong. Me being a Tennessee fan doesn't suddenly mean that Nebraska is not a program that lives in the 90s. That's not how it works. I mean, a lot of these comments are just absolutely hilarious. Let's see. I try to stay away from team channels like this, but this was a good one. Well, I'm not necessarily a team channel anymore. I was back in 2023, and before that, I did mostly Tennessee videos. But now, when I took over doing Cultural Chaos on the Cultural Iceberg, that obviously changed. Including Penn State was kind of laughable when at best they've looked into a year where they were kind of a de facto contender. Well, de facto contender is still miles ahead of everybody else below them. Everybody else not even close. Besides maybe Indiana with that 1 year. But if you include their past into that, suddenly that makes it irrelevant. Anyone who's a fan of their team hates their team more than anyone. Oh, you're kind of not wrong about that. OU has a #1 strength of schedule. They can get an at-large bid. Yeah, if they win 9 games, then yeah, I think they'll make the playoffs. They have an extremely brutal schedule. But the problem is with Oklahoma is that they need to win some of these games that they're not supposed to. And I definitely think they could go on the road in like Knoxville and beat Tennessee. Maybe they beat Texas. They win a game like that. I know they play Auburn. I think they play Auburn at home. That should be a winnable game. But they do have many, many winnable games on that schedule. Living down here in Georgia, I hear a lot of Ohio State hate. For what? Oh my God. This guy become a college football fan 2 days ago? Dear Lord. This guy wearing a Tennessee blanket telling Ohio State how garbage they are. Yep, that's kind of what I did in those videos. Bad take, not a hot take. Yeah, this guy definitely... Ohio State broke you, chef's kiss. Yeah, this guy definitely started becoming a college football fan yesterday. Coastal Auburn was diabolical. I think I was talking about Clemson. I can't remember. Absolutely. Yeah, here we go. Oregon beat all 3 Kings and then did what? And then did what after that? Tell me. I'd love to know. Nick Saban played for Kent State. Good for him. Love Tyrant mentioned. Yeah, and then you know, I have the usual comments where it's like, oh, this guy just copied urinating tree. This guy, they don't know the lore. They don't know the lore I put into this channel. Also the fact that I'm good friends with the urinating tree. I mean, the grammar police is hard at work. Ever heard of a comma, a period, or using proper English? What's up, Rec Talk? Great show last night, by the way. Had a very, very fun time over there on College Football Weekly. Go support that show. He does that every Friday at 9 o'clock. Congrats, Squid. You make a guy become a fan of the sport. Maybe I did. Maybe this guy became a fan of college football the moment he saw my video. And then he can join the Ohio State squad and become just as annoying as most of the others. As much as I say most, because you got guys like this. As much as I want to hate you, Squid, I love these vids, man. See, I like guys like that. I like guys who can take, take the criticism and the trolling on the shoulder and then move on. So it's the entitlement that confused me. I'm talking about Tennessee. Nah. Didn't Tree make a cameo in College Football Chaos? Yeah, we've done a few collabs together. I was on the Dumpster Fire show that he did, which was a very, very fun time. And yeah, he was on College Football Chaos. So yeah, no, we've had a few collabs. I've been talking to him recently. Yeah, we're both good buddies. And if these people, these random internet trolls, if they knew that, they wouldn't be typing what they've been typing. Yeah, another why'd Oregon not here? Because they like, yeah, where's their national championship? Seeing you and Uncle Lou go at each other live was hilarious, Squidtard. Yeah, Well, I'm not going to be called stupid and then just take that. That's how that goes. Michigan, the team that lost to Illinois. Yes. I'm sure everybody here has lost to Illinois at one point in their lifetime. What does that mean? But then again, One Piece profile picture tells you everything you need to know. One Piece fans are like the Georgia fans of the anime universe. Everything's got to be around them, and they've got the cognitive brain of a sperm cell. Pretending to be amused by Northwestern having a ton of money, they're like the Stanford of Chicago. What does that mean? How did the Sandusky scandal set Penn State football back a decade? They were the same before and after. No, they weren't. Penn State was a consistent contender under Joe Paterno. Then the moment he got fired, they were down in the dumps. What is this guy? Man, y'all gotta learn your history. Do a little bit of research for once. Hey, Squid, are you gonna get rid of the orange sometime? No. Why would I ever get rid of the orange? That's my thing now. I thought the Oregon logo thing you said was really funny. What? Zero titles? Because it is true. The Oregon logo is a representation of their national titles. Oregon is a powerhouse, too. A powerhouse of never accomplishing anything. See? Yeah, people are going back to some of my older videos from the offseason, and yeah, seeing their comments is pretty funny. To be honest, any top team who was in question would have been left out if their star quarterback was injured. Way to show them by crying and getting belt to ass against Georgia. And they did a whole lot of crying over what? To get destroyed by Georgia and then go on to go 2-10 in the regular season. Great job. Penn State is not a powerhouse. They're a borderline irrelevant. They have not beat Ohio State and Michigan in the same season in over 20 years. They're a tier below both of those teams, and they're a tier below. They're a tier above the rest of these turd nuggets over here. Because who are you gonna put here? If Penn State is not one of the other three dragons right next to Ohio State and Michigan, then who do you put there? Sure ain't Nebraska. What's up, Matty Sims? Get rid of the orange 2025. Nope, never happening. Squid, I saw this on the comment section the other day. Do you agree Tennessee is the Penn State of the SEC? No, we're more like, as sad as this is to say, I think we're more like the Nebraska, honestly. I'd say if you think about a team that's the Penn State of the SEC, it's more like LSU, a tier below like Alabama, but they still often sometimes have really, really good years. Now, they did win a national championship, which does set them a little bit apart from Penn State. But back to Tennessee, yeah, I think they're more Nebraska because I don't think they're necessarily fully attracted to the 90s like Nebraska is. Tennessee is still a team that hangs on to 1998. And I hate these dumbasses who run around. This is the thing that I got to go back to full screen for this because stupid damn OBS, dude. Okay. I gotta go back to full screen for this. This is something that really, really pisses me off. When Tennessee fans come into a football conversation and do this dumb shit. I'll tell you guys what. It feels like 98 here in Knoxville. It feels like 98. It feels like 20 years ago. It's been more than 20 years already. Let it go. Let the past go already. 1998 is so long ago. Feels like 98 up in here, Squidtard. No, I don't want it to feel like 98. Stop talking about it. How stupid would it be if a Nebraska fan walked into a football conversation and it said, I'll tell you guys what, it feels like 1997. Or if a Notre Dame fan came in and was like, guys, I'm just going to tell you what, it feels like 1988 over here in South Bend. 1988. Most of you guys weren't even alive for that. You weren't even a thought. We're going to talk about feels like 98. Shut the hell up. How about it feels like this year? It feels like the current year. How about that? How about that feels like 90? I don't know what it feels like. I wasn't even alive. I hate it when people do the feels like 98 thing. So damn annoying. Yeah. It's going to feel like an ass whooping if I hear anybody saying that again. Ay. All right, where were we? See, why, OBS, you're really starting to piss me off. I'm going to beat your ass, too. Man, during the D'Antonio era, Michigan State just didn't beat Michigan every few years. We beat them virtually every year. Well, Michigan was, they were in the Brady Hoke years, so naturally that's how that kind of panned out. Love the effort you probably put into this. Probably. Man, it took me like 2 weeks to get that finished. Penn State is blue Iowa with better recruits and worse development. That's an interesting take right there. I'll say that much. Would definitely watch a video of Squid memeing on certain college football coaches. Well, I've got another one coming up very soon. That's the new one that I've got coming up. There is another coach video coming out. Another coaching experience video. Hot take, revenue sharing will actually bring about more parity in college football. Well, it already has, and yeah, I agree with that. The revenue sharing is definitely going to do a lot for, the college football. Oh, wow! I forgot what that was like. Oh, wow. What's going on, SCCFT? Appreciate the $10 super chat, buddy. He says, what's up, Squid? Great show, as always. Well, good to see you, man. Good to see you, fellow Gamecock. He was on the Vol-Star podcast a couple of months ago. Good to see you on here, brother. And thank you for the $10 super chat. But yeah, I mean, I think it is better for parity, but if we allow things to get as out of control as they have been, I mean, they're already talking about, making contracts for players that they can't disobey, or like players getting contracts where, even if the player gets injured and is not able to play throughout the rest of their career.
It's real, and he tried to eat my ass.
I might have to remove those sound bites that play every time that happens. Feels like 1969, says SECFT. But yeah, as I was saying, say a player gets injured for like the entirety, like they start as a true freshman, and then suddenly they get injured or not able to play a down of football throughout the rest of their life. What they're trying to do now is they're making contracts for players to where even if that does happen, you still got to pay them millions of dollars for like the next 4 years. And that's going to be a huge problem, because then schools are just going to continue to lose money by a significant amount, and that's going to really set up some bigger problems. And that's also going to set up as a potential recruiting violation. Not necessarily a violation, but more recruiting issues, because then schools can create bigger contracts if they have more money, and the smaller schools won't be able to afford it. So I hope they don't go through with that. I've been hearing rumors about that. And if they do, that's just going to be awful for the sport. Sam Pittman is going to get fired if he loses to the champion of life, Butch Jones, and Arkansas State. Holy hell, I forgot they play them. But yeah, they're not losing to... They can't lose to Arkansas State. No way. Hot take, Tennessee is probably making it to the Citrus Bowl. That's not a hot take. We go 9-3. That's exactly where we're going. Please put the Eminem versus IBS one up. That kills me every time. Like the Indiana Notre Dame get out video. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw that game. Is freaking Indiana was just getting massacred. And turns out that's exactly what happened to most teams in the first round. SMU, Clemson, and Tennessee went through the exact same thing. Do you think that Lance Leopold needs more years to rebuild Kansas? Well, depends on your description of rebuilding. Would you consider 6-6 to be a rebuild? Because if you do, then I guess he doesn't need much of any, because that's where I think Kansas is just going to be circling around, sort of that 6-win range. But in terms of a full-on rebuild, they never... Kansas was never at a point where they were a dominant force in college football. They aren't like Nebraska or Tennessee or anybody else, even like Texas, who just finally got to that point, because Texas was at that point for a while to where they were at the similar position of like a Kansas. They just sucked every year. They were terrible. They were a joke of college football. They finally gotten back to a point where they were a juggernaut. Kansas was never a juggernaut of the sport. They literally have they're an icon of the doo-doo bowl. They're an icon of the toilet. That's where they reside. That's their mascot. So, I mean, it just sort of depends on your description of rebuilding. Your urinating tree style videos are a gem and gift. We don't deserve you, bro. I appreciate it. I really, really do. That's very, very nice of you to say. I'll say that much. What is your top 5 most hated teams in college football? Top 5. Well, this recency bias. Ohio State. There's your recency bias coming in for you right there. But Ohio State, Vandy, Florida, Georgia, Florida, Bama, huge gap, then Georgia. There you go. There you go. Calling Michigan State a peasant when they made the playoffs before Penn State is wild. Well, look at what they did the last few years, and then you can come back to me. And then, yeah, Penn State actually scored when they went to the playoffs, though. Yeah, Michigan State went to the playoffs as a consolation prize for beating Iowa in the Big Ten Championship. And then what'd they do? Scored 0 points. I never expected Danganronpa fans and Illinois football to be in the same sentence. Expect the unexpected when you watch this channel. That's all I can tell you. Head over to basketball, and it's completely different. I'm obviously coping as a Purdue fan. Yeah, Purdue's a complete mess in football. They'll need a lot of help. They'll need a lot of help this year. Kansas going from 9 wins to 6 wins is a hell of a downgrade. Despite returning production, Jalen Daniels is a living hell of a quarterback. The Caleb Love of college football and single-score games. Yeah, Kansas definitely did not get lucky with a lot of the games that they played against, and that showed at the very end of the season. Is that when the luck finally got on their side, Kansas started winning, and pretty much Kansas was a lot of the reason as to why the Big 12 just turned into the Conference of Chaos at the end of the year, because they beat 3 of the top contenders in the conference in back-to-back weeks. They beat Iowa State, Colorado, and I forget the other one, but they beat those three teams, knocked them out of contention for the Big 12 championship game. It is just absolutely insanity. Bro hates UGA like UGA hates speeding laws. Yeah, no doubt. They finally Kirby Smart finally did something about that. Really did something about that. When Nitro Tuggle did it, he kicked him off the team, and now both of the guys who got caught for their latest DUI speeding violations who Kirby kicked off the team, they're both at Purdue now. So have fun with that, Purdue. Good luck with it is all I can tell you. What do you mean UCF in 2020? Cincinnati went undefeated and missed the playoffs, but they that was only 9-0 and lost to UGA off a walk-off field goal. What? What kind of point is he trying to make there? There's a timestamp there, so I must be missing some sort of context, but whatever. This video is entertaining but extremely inaccurate. Why? Because Oregon's not there? That's not inaccurate. Until they win a national championship, they're not going to be there. Nitro Tuggle is a very unfortunate name. Very unfortunate. The good news is that they are 6-4 versus the SEC last year. I guess, okay, good job. What do you want, a cookie? What's that got to do with anything? This channel's content rules, and I have not been disappointed so far. All right, good to hear. The SEC is top heavy. Yeah, show a Big Ten fan this video. Did I ever even say that in the video? Is he pulling that quote from the Aether? Where do you think I said that? It was funny. Yeah, urinating tree did college football. Still mad about that playoff ass whooping I see, and we spent less than y'all. Talking about me? Cause wait, we spent less than Ohio State. Does he think I'm like an Oregon fan or something? I don't know what he thinks. I don't know what any of these people think. This video makes more sense when you realize Squidtard is a Tennessee fan. Yeah, well, all my points remain true despite me being a Tennessee fan. I could be a Kennesaw State fan and everything about this remains true. I don't get what... I mean, it's funny because I could be a Kennesaw State fan. I could literally come out and advertise myself as a Kennesaw State fan. You know, come around, yeah, go Owls. What's this guy going to say? Oh, this guy's a Kennesaw State fan and he's talking about Ohio State. Yeah, what are you going to say? That's what I wish I could do. Because imagine, they'd be just so funny because then all these people who are coping about me being a Vol fan are suddenly going to be like, oh, guys, Kennesaw State fan. Remember that? Remember the one time when, that's the thing. Kennesaw State is so irrelevant. They only joined the FBS like a couple of years ago. They were so irrelevant that these people who are casuals of the sport are not going to be able to say anything. They won't, because they won't know anything about Kennesaw State. The only thing they'll know is that you're a Kennesaw State fan. You lose games, something like that. What if you were invited to college game day or big noon kickoff? Well, the odds are I get invited to college game day. I don't know why they'd put me on big noon kickoff. I'm not a fan of any Big Ten team, so. But if I were on college game day, that would be absolutely extraordinary. That's all I can really say. Who knows? I mean, I'd say that's impossible. That'll never happen. But guys like Tom Grossi ended up making a pick in the NFL draft. So who knows? Yeah, but you're talking for a Tennessee fan. You're a Tennessee fan. Suddenly, everything you say is now irrelevant. Kennesaw State will get in the college football playoffs now. Yep, and they'll get beat by Ohio State. And then Ohio State fans will be like, hey, this guy's a Kennesaw State fan. I bet he's real mad about Ohio State beating him in the playoffs. Yeah, here, I get this video is satire, but the video is still ass. Okay? Geek boy. That's how you know this is going to be a great comment right here. Geek boy. Literally starts out with that, and then it says Nebraska. So, yep, you already know. Nebraska is beating down Michigan this year. Put a bet on that claim. A new quarterback is going into Lincoln with an inept offense. Inept offense and beating Raiola? Okay, buddy. Maybe I'll be wrong, but likely not. First of all, this video was about trash talking the past of these teams. So why is he talking like I said in the video, Michigan's beating Nebraska 100-0 when they play on the field today? Like, what? By the second last week of the year, perhaps they're getting a knockout blow over the boring. Godzilla tried to read this and had a stroke and died. What is he talking about? Michigan's one of the top 3. What is this guy? Who types these comments? Bro is on a like. How do you type this? I can't. I'll try and read this and then just my brain will blow up. Nebraska fans are on a copium level never before seen. Raiola Mahomes the third. Yeah, he's Patrick Mahomes 2.0. Besides Alabama, which team do you have the most respect for? Well, the first comment of that is wrong, because I don't really have any respect for Alabama right now. I mean, I have a little bit of respect for what Nick Saban built, but that's got nothing to do with what Alabama is now. But the team I have most respect for, I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, that's obviously a tough one to say. I mean, I was going to say Indiana because they got to the point where they made the playoffs with the team that they have, but then Kirk Cignetti, he got too big of a head and came out and said, we beat the shit out of top 25 teams, despite not playing any top 25 teams on his schedule. So I really don't know in terms of teams I have respect for. I mean, I could give off a bunch of random names. Like I could say I have respect for Kennesaw State for being a fan of Kennesaw State. Am I hearing things, or is that yeah, I just have the music on as ambience in the background. Yeah, just to have a little bit of audio in the background, so that way it's just not me speaking in the sound of my ceiling fan. Illinois is one out of 3 schools to ever win a real conference championship in the modern era in 1983, along with 2016 Oklahoma and 2010 Oregon. Well, that's 1 year. That's, again, it's timestamp here, so missing context, but I'm not really sure what he's trying to defend there. What about the Big Ten champs in their first year in conference? Yep, the old Oregon fan, and that was the pinnacle of the season. Yeah, 42-17. Great score. Not. 2 videos featuring Kent State in 10 games. The more talking That's more talking than what we do around here, and I live 2 miles from the school. I know, crazy. You're never gonna get that again unless Kent State wins 2 games in a row during college football chaos. Good luck getting that again. You had it perfect until you said Iowa's the Citrus Bowl runner-up. The Outback Bowl is the baseline of success. Okay, that's fair. I didn't really. At first, I thought he was going to try and say that Iowa often wins the Citrus Bowl, and I was like, well, it wasn't really. I'm not really exaggerating that. It was just kind of a figure of speech. But good to see that he's talking about the Outback Bowl instead. Wisconsin should have never fired Christ. Now, I can agree with that. Here after Nico left. Yeah, crazy that I made this video, and then like a week afterwards, Nico went ahead and hit the portal. So I was, or I think it was like a month afterwards, actually, but still, if I had just waited a month to make that video, I'm sure that would have been an extra chapter in there for that. The Southeastern Conference, college football's mental institution. Huh, that's an interesting one. I don't know what it tells me, but he might be a Tennessee fan. Wow. Hold on a second. I mean, really? What gave that away? Straight crazy. Texas Tech going to the Alamo Bowl. Texas Tech to the Alamo Bowl. Hell yeah. Thing is, if they win the Outback, Texas Tech could probably win the Alamo Bowl, and then Joey McGuire will keep his job. Oh, yes. Texas Tech is like the Alamo Bowl merchants. Hell yeah. Make a video like this for the ACC.
You got barbecue back there?
And then, yeah, the old, the SEC is just Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. Thing is, though, even if you go back and funny thing, I got a couple of comments earlier than that talking about how like the SEC is just Alabama and that's it. But funny thing is, even if you say hypothetically, and I know Bama loves hypotheticals, even if you move Alabama entirely out of the SEC and just pretend they don't exist, since 2000, the SEC still has more national titles than all of the other conferences. Since the BCS era. So when they first started doing the actual national championship, the SEC has more national championships than any of the other power conferences, and it's not close. Not even close. The Big Ten doesn't even come anywhere close to it. And the funny thing is, since the BCS era, there's only been 2 teams that have actually contributed to the national title counter, Ohio State and Michigan. That's it. Everybody else did not include, not even Penn State. Their last national title was 1986. So, I mean, Tennessee, they had a title in 1998. It feels like 98, Squidtard. Auburn had a national title in 2010. LSU had 3, which was, I think it was 03, or 02, something like that. They had the 03 one, the 07 one, and then 2019. Georgia had the 2 titles from 2021 and 2022. And Florida contributed to that as well. 2 titles, 2006 and 2008. And then if you go back even further to where their last national title was for the Big Ten, and that goes I think it goes all the way back to 1986, then yeah, that's when Penn State won theirs. I'm sure there's other teams that you can list off there. With Alabama winning more national titles, Florida winning more national titles. Now, they're going to say, oh yeah, well, what about the teams that are now from the Pac-12 that have transitioned over to the Big Ten? Which is weird, because why would you want to include that? Because if we're going to do that, then that means we can include the teams in the Big 12. Texas and Oklahoma, the only contributions to their national championships, because the Big 12 has no national championships now if we're going to go by that rule. It's strange. Lot of deflection is what I know for a fact. To be fair, the Citrus Bowl is the best the best non-New Year's Six bowl. No, that's true. I can agree with that. Well, but it is coming close now between them and the Pop-Tart Bowl. And that's nothing that the Citrus Bowl did. It's just that the Pop-Tart Bowl, the Pop-Tart Bowl is everything now. You got people pushing to make the Pop-Tart Bowl a playoff game. So yes, a lot of people love the Pop-Tart Bowl now. Oh, this guy. I read this comment, or at least the first few sentences. See this, read more right here. I want you guys to take a guess for a second and just think about how long this comment might be. Okay? Think about that for a second. Just picture in your mind how long you think this comment is, and however long you think it is, you're wrong. It's even longer. Oh my god. Oh, there's another paragraph. Oh my lord. What is, buddy, what is wrong with you? How do you have, but you need to go find a hobby. You need to go, maybe this guy's like 70 years old or something like that. Just has a lot of time due to retirement. He needs to go find a hobby immediately. Go mow your lawn or something, or ride a roller. Go to Dollywood. Go to Disney World. I'm sure you have money for Disney World. You got to find something, because if you have this much time to type this out, I mean, this is insane. Over a satirical video like this. This is ridiculous. Buddy, we got to find you a hobby. If you're watching right now, we need to find you a hobby immediately. I'll help. I'll contribute to that. I'll show you like anime or something. You're probably 60 years old, so you'll probably hate it from the first minute I show you it. But we got to find you something to do, because that is insane. No comment on that video should be that long. Yeah, I had a Georgia fan write a damn essay about how Georgia would beat the dude who had a Penn State. That's alarming. It's extremely alarming. We got to find this dude a hobby pronto. Yeah, I love going through and checking out some of those comments. It's really, really fun doing that, because, you know, you never know what you're going to get with these with these people. And all the people that support my stuff, I greatly appreciate. And I love reading all of the supporting comments, really, really do. But sometimes I love going through and, you know, reading some of the hate comments that I receive, because it is people who don't get that this shit is half satirical. Yeah, I think I'm saying that right. But there's people who, you know, I'm doing this for fun, and a lot of it is truths. Like, it's not like I'm saying, I don't get it. Like, when I say Penn State hasn't had their last national title since 1986, what are you going to say to that? Oh yeah, well, like, you suck, and your channel sucks because I hate hearing facts. No more facts. Okay, buddy. Well, if you want everything to be all opinion, then Penn State sucks. Oh, great heavens. That about describes it. All right, guys. Well, I've got to get on out of here. I've exhausted all my time for today. We'll see you guys next week. Same business as always. I'll get on here probably 8 o'clock every Saturday. We can just have a hangout stream, talk about college football. And before you know it, we're going to be at the thing. We're going to be at the real college football season. Episode 97 of the Vol-Star Podcast. Of course, same time as always. 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Coming up this Monday. Lucas will not be in attendance as he is on a cruise. Hence why he was not here tonight. We'll see him probably episode 99. So, yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you all again for watching. Thank you again. I don't know if we've reached it yet. I think we're very, very close, though. I'll look again, see where we're at. Yeah, we're 45 away from it. Basically, probably first thing I look at tomorrow is going to be us at the 15K range. I can't say it enough. I appreciate all of you guys for all the support you put to this channel. Y'all are great people. Love each and every one of y'all. And yeah, let's continue moving forward. That's all I can say. And the last thing I'll say before I wrap things up here is that my next video will be around a very specific individual, another coaching experience, and it's somewhere down in the country roads. Take me home. That's all. This is the only hint you get. See you guys next week. Love y'all. And as always, power retard area.